Hello, I'm coming to you not live from a hotel room in Houston, Texas. I hope you've enjoyed the snow days so far, and we'll see whether school is open on Thursday or not. I'm attending an energy conference trying to recruit students for our MBA program down in Houston, is where I am. Let's get started on the idea of business level strategies. And this really is one of the key chapters that I want you to understand, and I also want it to affect how you think when you walk into businesses. So we're going to start. I'm having trouble with my slides. There we go. We're going to talk about business level strategy today. There are 5 generic strategies, although I'm going to tell you that I really don't think we should view them as in individual buckets, if you will. And we're going to explain the strengths and weaknesses of both and talk about the importance of fit. Usually in class, I spend a lot of time talking about this concept of what kind of brands do you like? And I say, how many of you are brand conscious? And so if you would just answer that question for yourself and then think about what brands are you loyal to and why? For example, I'm very loyal to Lands' End. That is a clothing company. I got hooked on them back in the days of catalogs, and the thing I liked about it was I have long arms and I have a hard time finding shirts that fit me. Typically, the sleeves aren't long enough, and with Lands' End, I could I could order the exact sleeve sizes that I needed. And for me, the most important thing is it really wasn't any more expensive than buying shirts in stores that didn't fit me as well. And so I fit into that last bullet as well. I consider myself very price conscious. And sometimes, because I am price conscious, that makes me loyal to certain brands. For example, Lands' End, I consider to be a good value for my money. The reason I wanted to start off by having you consider your own personal preferences is that is an initial roadmap into how businesses try to establish themselves and create a business strategy. It is important that you consider who are our customers, what needs are we going to meet, how will we meet them, and that how we will meet them is a part of the business model that we're going to talk about just a little bit later. And then very importantly, this goes back to the idea of the external and the internal analysis. How are we going to do that in a way that fits in with our core competencies such that we have a competitive advantage? So it's not just about what are we going to do, it's like how are we going to do it better than our competitors? And so here are some ways that companies sometimes create value. They try to be less expensive than some. They try to have a product that everyone just prefers on its features. Some people go in and they understand the requirements of a particular market and they serve that small market very well. And then some people try to do a little bit of some of the articles above. And again, I want to emphasize that when we're doing the strategic planning, it's how does this fit into what I do well, which is my core competencies. So you see on the screen the standard definition for a business level strategy. Let's take a pause before we dive in. Do all firms have a real strategy? I've told you in the first and second day of class, I think the answer to that is probably they don't. If you were to ask them what's their strategy, they would say, well, we try to provide great value and take care of our customers and have a great relationship with our customers. And some firms do that, and I'll tell you that that is in essence a part of a differentiation strategy where they're trying to differentiate on their service component. Whether they're really differentiated, though, is a horse of a different color, or I'm using a big cliche there, is a very different thing. But sometimes it's very subtle. I go to church with a guy who runs a small carpet cleaning company. And when I say small, he only has 1 or 2 other employees that work for him. And he was telling me his story, and it just like bang. This is a great example to tell my students. When people call him to get a quote, and that's very common in the carpet business. You say, I've got X number of rooms, looking for this, how much would that be? Here's his line when people call him and they say, da-da-da-da-da-da, how much will that cost? He says, I'll tell you right now, if you are searching for the cheapest provider in Wichita Falls, I'm not it. I do most of the cleaning myself. And the employees that I do have, if they show up at your house, they won't smell and they'll do a good job. And in that way, he is establishing a point of differentiation. He's saying, I'm not going to be the cheapest, but what? I'm going to be the best. I do most of the cleaning myself, which says what? You're going to get a better job because the quality of my workforce is higher. A, because it's usually me, and B, if you think about it, when you hire somebody to come and clean your carpets, it's not that uncommon for them to walk in and smell because they've been sweating all day. And it's the sort of business that doesn't necessarily attract the highest caliber of employees. I'm sure there are some very high caliber carpet cleaners, but that's not necessarily the case for all of them. And so you can see that even in this very simple example, he had a differentiation strategy. So when we talk about position, if we go back to that Porter position, trade-off, fit, most of the time when we say what's a firm's position, what we do when we answer that question is we see their business strategy. And then the textbook does a nice job of talking about something that I think is really important, which is its business model. How does it provide the actual goods and services that it promises? Many cases, this is an exercise of the value chain. What do we do? What don't we do? Where do we put emphasis and the like? I'm running through these, and you go like, well, wait a minute, these aren't even in the textbook. But I think these are some of the key points you need to understand as we dive into the discussion of strategy. Now, this is out of the textbook, and I would say for a exam, you're going to want to know this because they say the key to having a different position is you either perform the activities differently. In other words, you do things differently than other firms do them, or you do a whole different set of activities. You have a whole different way of scratching the itch. And if you just think of restaurants, you see how restaurants will do things very differently. I personally think this sells short the concept because I believe it is better for some companies to perform the very same activities as everybody else. You just do them better. Now, Porter may say, well, then they're performing the activities differently. I'm not so sure. But never discount the fact that sometimes people are able to execute a successful strategy because what they do, they just do better. I'll stop here and begin our next slide as we talk about, or begin the next video as we talk about the generic strategies. But let me make a very key point before we go into that. If you look on the graphic of a little nice box that has 4 smaller boxes with a box in the middle, I don't like this in that it puts them into distinct categories. I like to look at cost leadership as one end of the spectrum and highly differentiated as the other, and kind of see it as a continuum in between. And then you have the idea of the integrated cost leadership and differentiation strategy that indicates where that middle point would be. Anyway, we'll dive into that more in the next video.